So I'm going to run very quickly through a couple of points that I've added in more recently. With regards to online learning, I suppose that the biggest message that our team are hoping to share is keep it simple and be kind to yourself. And that's backed up with research from the EEF, the Education Endowment Foundation. You can click a link and go and look at that, the source there. What they say is that regardless of the mode or the method of delivery, it's the quality of teaching that matters. We're very lucky in Scotland. We have so many fantastic educators like yourselves, and that's the key part to this. You are the key part. So regardless of whether it's online, in face, you have the skills and the knowledge of how to teach different parts of the curriculum, and all I'm here to do, hopefully I can help with, is some of the application of those skills and knowledge to online learning, which I'm sure you've been developing anyway. We can't do much about the access to technology, but what I have put in here with regards to actual physical devices or anything, but I have put in a slide, a couple down, looking at some of the accessibility options and tools. So I won't speak to them too much today, but there are things like Immersive Reader from Microsoft, and there are some Google Chrome extensions that if you're using Google apps and platforms, and also with iPads and mobile devices, a lot of these have accessibility features built in. So I've got a slide further down. We're going to look at some of the tools such as Microsoft Onenote, which are really effective for peer interactions. So that's something we'll cover. And all of these ideas between using assignments, using OneNote and using Microsoft Forms will support pupils to work more independently. Particularly if we flip the learning, but I have also, which would be our preferred model, is a flipped method of delivery. But I understand some people will be delivering live learning if that's what their learners' needs require. So I've put in a few points for discussion where we can share thoughts around whether it should be synchronous or asynchronous and why you might pick one over the other. So we can explore that as we go. And the key part here from the EEF is about those different approaches. All I have is one example or a few examples, but I don't have the answers, and you've probably got more answers than I do, and what I'm hoping is to provoke with some questions and see if we can share those best practices, those best interesting examples we have, and how that might support others to see and hear those. Also, working with my literacy and English colleagues, just at the end of last year, we delivered a series of learning about how we can use digital to develop literacy in English, and I've shared the slides for that within these slides. If you've got a mobile phone to hand, for example, you can scan that and have a look at those as I speak, but I've shared some of the content there because there's fabulous research and reading that my literacy and English colleagues shared in those slides. So save you having to go hunt for those, I've put them into the slides there. Worth reminding, and again this is the reason that I would say that our team support an asynchronous model, of flipped learning over that live lesson approach. Not everyone has the same access, and if I am delivering new learning and teaching to my class live on camera, and for whatever reason they're unable to access that, then it widens that attainment, it widens that accessibility. And again, not everyone's coming from the same point, so I don't know whatever reason my pupils can't access my live video between 9 and 3, but there could be so many reasons for that, and that's why most of the model we'll talk to is around flipped learning. But what I want to do is invite you. I'm not going to use Jamboard at the moment, I've set that up there just in case, but what I'm going to use is again, just to paint the picture, I don't know how aware you are of the whiteboard tool built into Teams, so I'm going to open up a whiteboard and hopefully this is going to work. If it doesn't, I've got my Jamboard ready in the background. So I'm hoping you can now see my whiteboard through Office 365 should be coming up on your screen, and you can add post-its. So I'm going to suggest we add post-its because it's easier to keep them neat and tidy on the screen, but I'm going to ask you, there's somebody got one up there already. So what happens when learners can't access live lessons? If anyone is delivering live lessons, how have you got around that? Or if you have only used a flipped approach where you're using asynchronous learning what have been the benefits, or again, how have you supported learners who can't access digital learning in any way? How have you overcome those? So think about the barriers to technology and access, whether that's synchronous or asynchronous, live learning or offline learning, however you've done that. If you can pop some thoughts on a whiteboard, so there's somebody got videos that pupils can watch. Yep, absolutely, that's a common one. All these whiteboard post-its, I'm just going to spread apart here. So pre-recorded lessons are looking at the standard there. Again, lots of different ways of doing those recorded lessons. So learning packs sent home. Someone's written really small there. Pre-recorded, that seems to be the major one, which I would expect. Using SWEIC, ThingLink, so a few different platforms to support that as well. Videos and those guided instructions. Now, just when we're putting these up, I see lots of people saying video. There's a recent report published about data poverty, and this is a huge part to consider. Video uses up data, and if your learners, you really do need to know your learners and how they're accessing online learning, because if they're accessing it on a mobile device which is using mobile data, then if you've got 4 gig, that might seem like a lot of data when you've got access to Wi-Fi at home or at work and you're not eating into that data regularly. But if that is your sole mode of accessing the internet, 4 gigabytes of data, which I'm just going off, I think it was roughly about, say, £10 a month in a contract. But that's, again, depending, if that's the only mobile internet you have in the house, then that's not going to last very long if you're having to watch loads and loads of tutorial videos. So are we creating 5-minute videos? Are we creating 5-minute videos? Or are we creating 25 and 50-minute videos? Is there text to go along with the video, so that if a learner has difficulty accessing a video, they've got poor bandwidth, or they simply don't have enough data to use that, are we giving them an alternative, or are we forcing learners into video? So that's something to consider. Another part about data poverty is the fact that you need good credit in order to get a mobile contract. So unless you're on a mobile contract that's got large bits of data included, then pay-as-you-go data becomes even more expensive. So really having to consider, are we asking them to do the learning online, or are we asking them to submit it online? And are all our videos created as, or all our lessons created as video? How does that impact, again, those learners who are suffering from data poverty? So a few points to consider. Again, I don't have an answer to that. That will depend on your learners, but something I would ask you to consider. So I can see lots of 5-minute videos. Where do I find whiteboard? For me, that's in screen share. So I'm using the app, so I have an option to share content, and that brings up my share tray at the bottom of the page. I've got desktop, window, whiteboard and PowerPoint, and I can start a Microsoft whiteboard from there. So that's where to find it. Pre-recorded lessons you can watch again. Check-ins using live, yep. Quizzes, pre-recorded PowerPoints, yep. Only using flipped learning and supplying learning packs to go with that. 2 5-minute videos a day, great. So you can see lots of people already sharing those considerations. Videos with instructions, and not to pick someone saying PDF there, there's a lot of people in accessibility circles who would suggest that PDF is not the most adaptive format. So if you're sharing learning in PDF, it can be quite footery to zoom in that, say in a mobile phone. It doesn't adapt the page, it just zooms in, so you've got to then scroll across to read text if it goes across the page. It might be worth considering using Word to share your documents, because then you've got Immersive Reader built in as well. I'm going to leave you can keep adding some points here, they're all great, they're all valid. You can see someone's asking about flipped learning. Flipped learning being that model, sorry, I'm just jumping ahead and presuming. Flipped learning is the idea that we share the learning forwards. So for me, that would probably be the use of Microsoft Forms. I would give my learner a video, and then I would ask them to watch the video, complete the task. And I'm aware I've just said consider the amount of video content you use, but share a task, let learners go ahead and practice it, and then when you come back to the sort of joint learning, if that was in the class, you'd be saying in the classroom, but you might have your live call where they discuss yesterday's learning. So you give them a task to do independently and bring them back to the teaching time, as it were. I'm going to jump back to my slides here. Lots of great points. Those the whiteboard will be there to look back on later, and I'll share the whiteboards and some of the findings from that. Another point to consider about accessibility and equity is the fact that every learner that uses Glow can download Office 365 for free to multiple devices and access it with their Glow login. So again, it's worth considering that as part of your learning and teaching strategy. If learners are perhaps having issues with bandwidth, they live somewhere rural, or they've suffered data poverty, then you might ask them to create a PowerPoint, but they can create that offline, so they're not having to be online using the internet, using up their data or their bandwidth to create the PowerPoint using Glow Online, like most of us probably work. You can actually pull it, and if I can just demonstrate really quick, I'm going to come out of this presentation. So I have a PowerPoint here. I'm using Office 365 Online, but I have the option up here in the corner to open in the desktop app. And there's a couple of reasons you might do this. The online version is the kind of stripped back version, PowerPoint Lite, I guess. And when I open it on my desktop, and again, if you do it on a mobile or a tablet or an iPad, it's going to open up the app on the device. And they all work slightly differently depending on the version. So the Apple version is very different from the Windows, because Windows is what it's been designed for, so everything works here. But immediately I've got more options up here. I can record my PowerPoint, for example, which I can't do online yet, but they're always adding to that. If I insert an image, I can start to, if I insert an image very quickly, let's grab an online image. There are some photo editing tools that I can use that are built into PowerPoint as well. So there's a lot more in PowerPoint offline than there is online. So that's one reason to use it. And the other is, when I'm working offline, it's not using any data or bandwidth. I can edit my PowerPoint, and as soon as I close it, I'm just going to show you the picture format first. So I can select my picture. There should be an option to remove background. That's not lighting up just yet. There it is. So what it's going to do is use some AI, and it's going to try and predict where the background is. And I've got a very light version of something like Photoshop here. So it's not quite the full Adobe kind of experience you might expect, but I can tell it the parts of the plane that I want to keep and the parts that are the background, and what it will do is it will cut those out. And if I keep changes, it's going to get rid of the background, and I've now got part of an aeroplane. So you can do a bit of Photoshop work there, a bit of photo editing, and all I need to do is close this on my desktop, and it automatically saves it back to the online version. So again, I've not used any data or bandwidth. Those are definitely worth considering, how you use those Office tools in the offline mode. That can be really useful for learners who are suffering data poverty or bandwidth issues. And you can see I've now got my plane stuck to my online. I'm just going to get rid of that. And again, with the tools built into Office 365, we've got all of these accessibility tools, like Immersive Reader. Office Lens is not a part of the Glow offering, but it's a free mobile app that ties in. You can log in with your Glow username, and when you can scan images and upload them to your Office documents such as OneNote and Word. But what you can actually do is, if you scan a picture of text, you can upload it to OneNote, and it will, or in this case to Word. But what it will do is, once it takes your photograph of text from a book, say, it will put it into a Word document, and it's just loading up here. So I've got my picture of the text, a photograph of the text. It's taking a wee second to load here. So here's the photograph. It's then pulled the text off of that, and because it's pulled the text off, what I can now do is use up to view and select Immersive Reader, and I can have that page read to me. Just showing you with the desk, or the online version here with my laptop. In the Office Lens app, you can take a photograph of text and just ask for the app to read that text to you without having to go through the steps of uploading it to Word or OneNote. So I've taken a photograph from a book, and I can now...
One in the biggest, brownest, muddiest river.
I don't think you'll hear that coming through your speakers, but it's speaking to me with Immersive Reader built in. So there's loads of tools we can use there to make learning more accessible to our learners. Mobile devices have got a lot of these built in. Just a wee second, I can hear just somebody's got their mic on and it's just causing a wee bit of feedback on my end. Just make sure we've got all the mics off. So that's us done. So these tools are built in, not going to spend a lot of time on them, and I've put in the Google versions because some, I think some authorities in the Southwest might be using Google, or some of your learners might have access to that for whatever reason, so I'll share those as well. Big question to consider is what happens when a learner is stuck. I'd normally ask you for some thoughts on this on the whiteboard, but I'm going to skip over it and we'll maybe look at this further on as well, but keep that in mind. What do I do when learners are stuck? Am I engaging with the likes of CLD, community learning and development? Am I working with those ESOL, your English speakers of other languages, or adult literacy teams who are supporting families? You might well be sending them home a reading task, but are learners able to access it, and are their families able to access it? You can do all of the questioning you like, but when you send your learners away in the classroom, somebody's always going to put their hand up and say, I know you've explained it, but I'm stuck. Or what do I do? Have I to write the date? These sort of questions we get in the classroom. That's going to happen on remote learning as well. So how are we supporting those families? And I've got a wee quote here from EEF about parents saying the biggest barrier is that their own confidence in the subject. So if you're sending home some maths, you can put all the materials, all the instructions you like, but if that child gets stuck and they're asking a member of their family, an adult, to support them with that, who's to say that the adult's able to? And you can only imagine the stresses that that's causing at home. So I've put in a couple of links here that some of my colleagues in the numeracy maths team have shared with me. Hopefully they're useful to you. Again, you might want to share these externally. So that might go in a class or a school blog or a school Twitter or social media, whatever you use, rather than into Teams. And that means that parents and carers and families are able to access it. And obviously if it's within Glow, only the learner can access it. So it might be worth sharing some of those links externally, and they've been useful during remote learning. Again, point from our own paper that was published this year from the Education Recovery Group. Learners should not be online the entire day, and I think a lot of us have already spoken about that, about using flipped learning and not having live lessons all the time. So if you are going to engage in live learning, again, I think a bit easier in the primary school. If I'm the primary school teacher, I've got control over my whole day, it's my class. In the secondary, real considerations about how you approach that, just because if you're the maths teacher and you think the video should be on in the morning, but the English teacher thinks that the video should be on in the middle of the day, and the home ec teacher thinks it should be on in the afternoon, and then I've got PE as well, and that teacher wants the video on, unless you're all coordinating, you might just think, I've only asked them to have their video on for an hour, that's not bad. But if all the other teachers in that day are also asking for videos to be on, that becomes quite onerous on the learner, and particularly again if we're considering data poverty. So bits to consider there. I've also put a link to the Glow Connect page about how to manage a Teams meeting, because I think if we are going to do live learning, we're going to have that chat, even if it's just a pastoral thing, allowing our learners to have a chat at, say, lunchtime, and you could facilitate that on Teams. You need to make sure that you know how the functions of Teams work, so that if you have to remove someone or mute someone, that you know how to do that. And again, I've asked, is that explicit to learners? Do learners and their families now understand your expectations for online learning? Is that part of the school rules, code of conducts, expectations? Has that been shared transparently with families, that they understand what you are asking the learners to do? And if you've got rules about when learning is handed in or returned, or how it's returned, or if they're taking part, particularly in this case around live online learning, what are the standards and expectations, and does everyone fully understand that? Or are you saying to a learner that they're misbehaving and they're going to be removed from the lesson when they've not maybe been clear, because the rules are perhaps slightly different than what they were in the classroom, or the way that behaviour is handled would certainly be different because they're not in front of you. You can't put into practice those behaviour techniques like stand beside a learner, and quite often that changes their behaviour. You can't go and stand by their shoulder or ask them questions quietly while others are getting on with learning. So it's difficult to replicate some of that behaviour management online, so we need to make sure it's as clear as we can to families. And the last wee part here, just about Chris, are we considering that we've got safe and secure practice of passwords for learners, that they're not being shared, and also it's safer internet day to day, so perfect time to bring it up. But when we're asking learners to be online, we've got that duty of care, that responsibility to make sure that they are safe and secure, that they are learning about how to be safer and securer, more secure online. So I think cyber resilience and internet safety should definitely be something that we're teaching alongside the other curriculum areas, as it always should be, but I think especially at the moment. So, as I said at the very start, the quality of the teaching is the most important part, not the mode that we use. For all of the your concerns about online learning, if you haven't already accessed digilearn.scot, it's well worth going. You can see the long URL at the top of the page, but digilearn.scot will take you there. You can see how other people are delivering online. We're developing a learning path, so I'll come back to that in a wee second. You can see if we've got any other upcoming webinars here. And we've got a section on cyber resilience and internet safety that's definitely worth a look, again, particularly because today is Safer Internet Day. So we've split that into sections explaining what each part is and how you might tie those into the learning you do in other curricular areas. The upcoming webinars explains itself. Go and have a look and see, you'll see it by date and content, anything that's upcoming this month or next. And under learning paths, this is in flux at the moment, but what we've really tried to do is, for example, learning online, there's some real considerations. So there's someone that asked about flipped learning. We find that a much better in-depth explanation than I offered in there. Dual coding is really important to consider. And again, it might sound obvious, but if you were presenting to your learners about bananas, there should be a picture of the banana on the screen, not a fruit bowl with bananas and oranges and apples in it, because that actually distracts the learner. That causes cognitive overload. So when we are creating these online learning videos, are they explicit, and is the learning discrete? Is it so clear that what you're talking about, is that on screen matching what you're saying? We don't just put a wee smiley clip art or a wee face in there to fill some space. Everything that goes on to your content must have meaning. So if you're creating a PowerPoint or a presentation to share to your learners, or a video that you're recording of that, the information you deliver through your voice and the text and the images on the screen should all be saying the same thing, and it should be explicit. So that will ensure that learners take the message much more effectively than if we've got stuff on the screen on nice coloured backgrounds, which can distract from the message on the screen. Some information about creating videos, but we're all probably way down that path. But if anyone's still not sure, some information there. 5 minutes is your kind of optimum video length. Any more than that, learners start to lose interest. So we've got some methodology to consider there and some pedagogy. We've also got this page for leaders, so head teachers can have a look in there and see how other head teachers are developing digital in their school. We've got Office 365 and G Suite if you need it, breaking down all the different apps with examples, and we've got numeracy and literacy examples, which I'll show some of these in a wee moment as well, just some of the tools that we can use to support these areas, just because the responsibilities evolve. That's where I'll start with. So again, you can see some ideas for resources that you could use, and also some webinars that we've perhaps already delivered, or parts of webinars that we've delivered that speak to a particular point. I would always make a point of pointing out the strategic reading on screen. So this one has been developed by Perthink and Ross Council and shared back to us. It's got lots of our content from the webinars, but they've ordered it into a way that works quite well as professional learning. But it's all based on the research from Alex Quigley that says that when we read on a screen, we comprehend far less than we do looking at a physical text like a book. So rather than treating that as a deficit model, what we have looked at, myself and my colleagues in the Literacy and English team, is how we support learners to read better on a screen. And the biggest part of that, your takeaway, is note making. So again, I'd have any literacy tasks that I do, I would be focusing on note making and how they create effective notes to support their understanding, because that's what the research is telling us they need. and if they can make better notes, they're better able to access those texts. They'll then be able to access other parts of online learning. So definitely worth having a look at the strategic reading on screen, supported by the Alex Quigley research. So lots of methodology and pedagogies to look through there. Definitely worth having a look at our DigiLearn site, and we're adding to that all the time with lots of video content to make it easier for educators to access. So I wanted to then talk about the planning to deliver part, and when we're considering what we're going to teach, I think especially at this moment, the likes of Twitter is awash with great ideas, but just because you've seen somebody teaching something on Twitter and it looked really good and exciting, it doesn't mean it's going to be engaging or effective if it's not what your learners need. So, and I think I'm probably telling us things that we already know, but again, always worth reiterating that learning and teaching isn't vastly different online from what it is in the classroom. The mode of delivery for that is, but the way that we teach and how we teach, we should still be working to experiences, outcomes, learning intention, success criteria, and by using those, we make the learning as clear as possible for the learner, and that gives them that self-efficacy, that independence to work on their own learning, to be clear about what they're learning, and that drives the learning forward. I've put some examples in about how we can use screen sharing and collaborative whiteboards like we've already modelled to do live synchronous learning. Those work really well. There's some links to video playlists that we've created about those. And the other big one I say here is really focus on proven apps. There's lots out there, but I would be picking one or two that I can get confident with, because then my learners will be confident that I can support them with it. If I'm showing them a new app every week, that might seem exciting, but it's really difficult to, you imagine asking a learner to write in a different language every week. We're still doing numeracy, but I want to answer it in German this week, and next week we'll do Italian. That's difficult if they're always having to adapt that to something new. So I feel it's fair to stick to some proven apps, get one or two that you know work well, and I'm going to talk about using Onenote, for example, in forms, because I feel they're so flexible, so adaptive, and I can use them for different areas of the curriculum really easily. So some playlists here for you, and again I said, think about what you're going to teach, and then focus if you can on flipping the learning. And I'm going to talk about assignments first then. So I'm going to just come out of this screen and I'm going to show you within Teams. So here's my channel. I've got my post, probably the page you're going to land on first, and I'm sure there's lots of different ways to share it. For me, assignments are so effective because it puts everything in one place. And again, apologies if you're already using assignments, but hopefully there's some wee parts in here you maybe haven't considered or haven't fully utilised yet. So I've got, I'm going to start with my numeracy task. So I'm talking to numeracy and literacy, the responsibilities of all. So regardless of which curricular area we are delivering, there's going to be a link to numeracy or literacy within that. So this is what my learner sees when they come to this learning. They can see their learning intention, they can see their success criteria. Now I've duplicated that success criteria as a rubric here. I probably wouldn't do that if I was working in the classroom. I'd probably have one or the other. But I've put it here just to model that it works the same way. I really like rubrics because I can keep this language about how they are progressing or how they have achieved within that learning, and all I need to do is change the title of it, the success criteria, but the values I assign to how well they've met that success criteria, I can use that over and over, and also the learner can look at that. So when they come to their assignment, they can have a look and see, what is Mr. Milliken looking for? He wants me to talk about the place value of the numeral, and if I've got most of it correct, then I'm getting there, and if I've got lots of errors, then he's going to ask me to go over it again. I might as well check it and make sure it's accurate so that he doesn't make me go over it again. And he wants me to use manipulatives, so they're clear about what the learning is. I've then given instructions. I've not been lengthy here because I want that to be, again, accessible. But when I'm talking about accessible, I'm going to change my setting here. Just make sure I've got my sound on. When I come to this, there's the option here, you can see in the top right corner, for Immersive Reader to work.
Numeracy, WB the 11th of January. Category, Maths.
So it will read the instructions to my learner or their family. So again, if I'm asking my dad for support, my dad might be dyslexic, this is going to read it so he can understand it as well as I can. So it's really effective for learners and their families. Obviously my dad's not accessing this independent of me, but I might be saying, Dad, can you help me with this? And he's looking at the screen. So it's really useful to have that Immersive Reader tool. That's there, that's built in, it's part of the platform. And then everything I'm asking my learners to do, I have linked to it here, and I'll show you how to do that in a wee second. But this is what my learner sees. So if they need to watch a video, I've created the video and it's here for them to watch it. That'll take a wee second to load up. My video is slightly longer than 5 minutes because this is the first one I've created, so I should probably have made it 2 videos, but I've explained how I want them to do the task, but then I've also explained the numeracy I want them to learn as well.
And what we're going to be...
So here's how to do it, and then what I want them to do. I've put it in, there's 2 different versions of the video. I did one online, one offline. I've put a link, one of them was up on YouTube, that's what that's there. I've put a form in, so this is going to be my summative assessment, so I'm going to ask them to complete a form at the end of the learning. But what I want them first is, I've also put in the numeracy PLR document from the numeracy maths team here at Education Scotland. That might be useful for, again, families or adults to support them. I want my learner to use the MathsBot online manipulatives. So again, rather than saying go and use MathsBot, I've put the link to that here. So everything, again, if I'm in the classroom, bricks and mortar, and I want my learners to write a bit of paper, I'm giving them that bit of paper in the classroom, that jotter. If I want them to use sticky notes, I'm providing those. I'm not saying go and find them. I'm handing those out at the start of the lesson. I'm doing the same thing here, replicating my bricks and mortar. I'm giving them the materials I want them to use. And again, where do I want them to write it? I want them to answer this in their jotter. So I'm giving them the jotter to write it in. I've given them a Onenote document as part of that assignment. And the reason I've used Onenote, you can see here, I've created a wee template using some drawing tools in PowerPoint. So a blank one looks like. I want them to put a number in here. For the first couple I gave them the number, and then I've asked them to come up with a 2-digit number of your own. There's different strategies for that. I want them to split it into tens, and I made this before I looked at the PLR paper. That should say ones, not units. And then I want them to create a picture of the number. So here's some worked examples already. So here's how you could represent the number 18. And you can see somebody's doodled on that demonstrating. But they can represent that with a 10 and 8 ones, or they can represent it with 18 ones. And they can bigger the number, different ways they can represent them. They could also use a different manipulative to show their understanding. They've split it up into 1, 10 and 8 ones, so that's great. And what I've also done is, I'll show you this in a wee second when I open the OneNote up. To edit it, I can add an audio recording, so my learner can add an audio recording saying, this is how I did it. And they can explain that thinking. And then I can also, as the teacher, record an audio response to them. So I can say, great learning, George. I can see from this and from these examples that you're confident using the manipulatives to show what the numerals mean. So I can give them feedback verbally. And we've all asked a learner, what did I tell you last week? What did we talk about before lunch? And they've got to try and recall that with all the different things happening in their lives. So the fact that you can record that feedback, they can go back and you can say to them, what did I say last week? And they can come back to this bit of learning and they can listen to what you told them last week. I think that's so important for assessment, for feedback and for next steps. And again, they can type on it, they can type on the screen, so they can either write on it with a finger or a stylus if they've got one. My device, my mobile device, I can write my finger, and they can also type with their voice. So I'll show some of these tools in OneNote in a wee second. So what I've asked the learner to do is, I said, to explain their understanding of the number. So if I take the number 23 here, for example, what I want them to do is use these MathsBot manipulatives. I've suggested they use the Dean's blocks. They might use another, and the number, if I remember right, was 23. So I am going to use, it's a website, you can see up here, mathsbot.com. I think there's a very similar one called Toy Theatre, if I'm right, that just looks a lot nicer for younger learners. And then I can duplicate those numbers really quickly. So I might not have Dean's blocks at home. Chances are I don't. Now I'm using a Windows desktop. laptop, sorry. So what I'm using with Windows is Snipping Tool, and this is going to let me draw around that. I can save it, but I don't need to even save it for using it with OneNote. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go across to my OneNote, and I'm going to copy that picture in here. Take a wee second for that picture to load. While it's loading, I'll also show you I can use the drawing tools here. So just writing with my mouse will be a wee bit messier, but I have, moving it, I have 2 10s and 3 1s. And again, giving the learner that independence to choose how they respond. So whether they want to type it or write it or draw it with their finger. I'm just going to put that picture down here. So there's my picture of 23. I could also do that with 23 ones, but I'm not going to make you watch me copy out 23 ones. I've got a text here, and I've written the answer here. It's moved a wee bit, you can see just when I've moved the page up there. But what I can also do is I can type, I did da 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 da, and I can also, when I'm typing, go back to home, I can use the dictate button. What I did was I looked at the number and I knew that the first number, the front numeral, was the 10s. So I went to MathSpot and I used 2 10s to make 20, and then I used 3 1s to make up the 3 and 20, and 3 makes 23. So that's how I did that. So I can talk to the computer and it will type an answer for me. Really effective as well if we're thinking about text, speech to text for mobile devices. It might be a bit harder. You imagine trying to write extended answers on an iPad or a mobile phone. If your device, you can use those tools, that's really useful. But also within Insert, that's great learning there, George. I can really see your thinking and how you've understood this. Keep going with that and I'll check back and see how you get on with some other examples. So again, really quick for feedback, and again, I don't have to wait for my learner to hand this in. I can access it as they're doing it. So if they've only done a couple of examples, I can go in and give them feedback. That might be the encouragement they need to finish it. Or I can wait till they're finished and I can do it summatively as well. So different ways of doing that. But for me, OneNote lets me do everything that I did in the classroom. And also, if our learners are struggling, I said about bandwidth and data, they can do this offline and then they can upload a picture. So I can even take one straight from my camera. I think I've got one on my computer, I'm hoping here. I'm sure I've got a worked example. So let me see, let's imagine it was money. So I can insert this example I've already done. I could have drawn this in a bit of paper. I could have counted it out with actual coins and made the number 23. I have it in this particular example, but I can upload an image from my device. So that's, again, if I'm using my mobile, I could be writing a bit of paper on an actual whiteboard, taking a photograph and uploading it. Let's imagine you're teaching PE. You could be asking the learners to do a handstand at home, giving them a tutorial video for that. They could then have a photograph of them doing a handstand and upload that picture as evidence, or whatever else they need to do. So they have a picture as their evidence as well. You can provide feedback and they can give you an audio recording explaining their thinking. So all of those tools are in that one app. I don't have to go different places and have different passwords and different logins and different websites to access. Everything I'm asking my learner to do is within Glow and it's in the one app, and I can adapt that to so many. I've got some literacy examples as well that we'll see if we can have a wee quick look at too. So that's OneNote, and again I've put in a form there, so I put a form on at the end. I'm going to force, I've already used that example. I'll see, I think I've got a form in my literacy example. So to create an assignment, and then what I'll do is I'll get some feedback and see how people are getting on with assignments, if that's something we're using. So if we think about that, so if I go to create an assignment, I would see it be blank, but what I can do is I can title it, I can give it a tag. So again, easier to categorise, particularly for secondary, if you've got different subjects coming in. Show me the maths, and it will show you your maths assignments. I've got a text box where I can add instructions there. And then what I've got here is a button to add resources. So if I have a BBC bite-sized video, I can simply go to that website, copy the URL, the web address, and paste it in here. In some cases it will put a wee thumbnail and it will automatically title it, which is really helpful. I can create a new file, so if I want my learner to write on a Word document, I want them to write a report, literacy report. I probably want to be more explicit with that title. But what it will do is I'm going to attach the paper that I want them to write on. So I don't want them to have to find that. This is here. This is the document I want you to write on. I don't want you to make a document and share it with me or email me it or post it in chat. This is the document I want you to write on. Again, it keeps everything in one place and it keeps those expectations for learning and teaching high, just as they would be in the classroom. At the ellipsis, you can see I've got options here. So students can't edit, and that's really good for course notes. So if you've got information to share with learners or a worked example, you can share it and they can see it, but they can't edit it. And the other option you can see here is students edit their own copy. So when I open this, it will create a copy called George's Literacy Report. And when Fiona opens it, it will create a copy called Fiona's Literacy Report. And those are unique and individual, and the only people that can see those is the learner and the teacher. They can't see each other's unless they go in and share them, which is a separate button. So from me creating it, that's the expectation. I want you to read this but not write in it, or I want you to edit your own copy, which is great for assessment purposes. I've got my points turned off because I'm using assessment for learning. I'm not giving them a score out of 10, and I've attached a rubric. The beauty of rubrics is I can reuse ones that I've already got, so I need to delete that to show you how to add a new one. So I need to update that for the rubric to go away. But once I've got a rubric, I can reuse it and I can just edit it to suit my needs. So if I'm doing something for literacy, I can probably reuse parts of my numeracy rubric. It's still updating that, so we need to check back for that. And I can also choose which learners to send it to. So I can assign it to the whole class or some of the class. So that's just about that's about who it's going to, because I've already sent this one. So whether it goes to new learners or if they just have to wait for a new assignment. But I'll have an option here if I'm creating a new rubric to assign it to everybody, or just pick the learners in my class that I want it to go to and when it's due. Well worth considering your well-being and also your learners. Are you giving them until 12 o'clock on a Friday to submit that, or do you want it done by Monday morning or Monday afternoon? So have a consideration about what you think is reasonable, what your school thinks is reasonable, what your learners, their families would find reasonable. So I'm going to be submitting this Sunday night at 12 o'clock because that might give them the feeling that they should be working at that time, and that's perhaps not fair. So that's how we create an assignment, and that will go out to all the learners in the class. They'll get a notification telling them that you've given them a task to do, and for me it all goes in the same place for me as the teacher and for my learner. I can then review it as the teacher, and I can have a look through whether they've submitted it or I've handed it back to them, and I can go and have a look in here. So if I go into Helen's learning, I'm going to open up her work, and that's through the grades button. I can cycle through my learners here and go between learners and see each learner's work, how they've got on. So here was a watching grid for reading a text. So an analysis grid, I want them to watch a text, it's a video, and I want them to make predictions before they do. So each learner's got that. I can see Helen's not even attempted it. So I could say, Helen, you've not even attempted this. Is there anything I can support you with? So I can type away and give that specific feedback just to Helen, and return that to her with that feedback. And again, I can go and have a look at each learner's example of that, and I can annotate on it as well. So I could put in that as recorded feedback. So if I know my learner, I know if Julie's got a particular need around literacy, I can insert an audio recording that is she can listen to that to hear her feedback. So for me, it kind of captures just about everything I need. And while we're at it, insights, you can have a look and see when your learners are accessing Teams, and what they're accessing. So if they're accessing assignments or files, you'll be able to check that. And if a learner's accessing again Thursday night at 12 o'clock, I'd be having a think or a discussion with that learner and their family about why they're accessing at those times, and is there anything I can do to support them so that they're able to access it at a more reasonable time. So nobody's accessed my team this week. If I look at the last month, hopefully somebody's been on, and you can see there's Julie was on 2nd of February, and I can drill down and see she accessed it at 10 to 11 and she was in the files, so she was also having a look at her tasks that I've assigned her to see if there's anything in the files that's going to support that. Don't know why she's in the files, she'll probably be finding that under assignments. So I'm going to stop presenting for just a wee second. Sorry, I've not understood that. Fast tracking for marking through assignments. So if you're marking on your assignments, for me, if I was marking assignments, let's go back and see this. I don't know again if that's Miss Mancini, if I'm not answering this particularly the way that you've meant that, do let me know. If I was looking at my assignments here, so let's have a look at Richard's. If I'm going to find it, I'm going to give you one with a rubric. So I think it's really important to show how the rubric works for this. I should have my mask. I've taken my rubric off that, didn't I? Right, give me a second to just get my example. I've got one with a rubric here. Has this got a rubric? I shouldn't have taken that rubric example away, should I? So I can use my rubric to provide some feedback as well. Let's see, did I put it on the Zac Efron one? Richard handed us in 5 months late. So what's really good is I can have a look here and see if Richard has answered the text. So there's his Word document on the left hand side. I can highlight parts to ask him questions about that. It's telling me here he was late. You can see here as well I've annotated it, so I can open it up in my Word desktop in my Windows version, and I can use my pen to annotate on the screen. So that's really handy for feedback. What I can also do with the rubric is I can open the rubric up and I can give him there the equivalent of stamping his jotter. So if it's feedback that you're given repeatedly, so spelling, punctuation and grammar, there's no errors. I don't have to write "good job, you've got no spelling mistakes here," or for error, for lots of errors about remember punctuation at the end of sentences. So if it's feedback I'm given all the time, I'm going to use a rubric to effectively stamp his learning and give him that back as a stamp, and then be really focused on the feedback section here. But what Richard would then see is this annotation on his work. He can view the rubric and see the feedback. So he's got lots of errors, he's got work to go back, he can see why I've written all over his jotter. So I think the rubrics are really effective for quick feedback, and it's general feedback, but that's why we then use the enter feedback box to give that particular. So your 2 stars, I would sort of focus, your stars, stamp, stuff that's meeting success criteria, and where I really want to be specific about the areas to improve, I'm going to use my feedback comment there. So that's something you could consider. And again, I can actually just click here and give him some feedback. If I can support you with this, because I've had a look and seen he's got a few errors there, so I can give that back to Richard with some comments. So I can actually click feedback and give him some really quick feedback in his learning without having to go in and play with the rubrics and things like that. So a few different ways you can approach that. I hope that answers that. And I'm going to just pop another whiteboard up. I'm going to ask you just to have your thoughts and feedback. I've spoke for quite a while there. I've got another example similar for literacy about using Jamboard, OneNote or Jamboard if you're using the Google and G Suite. Yeah, we're going to keep using that here. And I just want to create, so I can export that. What I'm going to do is, let's scroll away. Let's go away to another part of the screen. I don't know if you need to scroll away as well. Let's go to a new space here on the whiteboard and add some more post-its. So that's my approach. I would be using assignments to put everything in one place to make that learning explicit. So it's all in the same place. The instructions are clear. All the resources that learner needs is there. Personally, I'm trying to stick within Glow. I know there are loads of great tools out with Glow, and that's fine, that's absolutely reasonable. Personally, I'm sticking within Glow because I know once my learner's logged into Glow, they can access everything I'm giving them. I'm not asking them to know 3 or 4 passwords. It's not a consideration for GDPR or your DPIAs, your information access for the local authority, which might block certain apps and platforms. So everything's taken care of. I don't have to worry about what my learner can or can't access. If I'm using it in Glow, they should be able to access it, especially if it's within Office 365. I've considered equity and accessibility within those tools as well, and that's the reason I've chosen to use OneNote. I could do a lot of that in Word as well, and a lot of the same features are there, but for me I find OneNote really replicates paper effectively, and that means that I can duplicate a lot of what I do in the class online. So those were my approaches. I'd love to get some feedback from yourself and post-its here about the strategies that you've been using for remote learning, the tools that you've been using, the platforms you've been using, and the type of activities that you're using that for. So any examples, anything you think that's worth sharing, please put them up. I'm sure they'll be useful to others to see that. I have got an example I can talk to very quickly before we finish about literacy. We've focused on that in examples that I've been delivering on using screening shots. Screening shots, I'll just pop it in to the chat pane. Because it's a part of Glow, it's free to access, and it's got wee videos to use as a text. And what we found is that those are engaging for learners. It helps with the accessibility, that again, they don't have to be able to read a text. They can watch a video, and they've got so much prior knowledge already of watching video or watching moving images in their life. Everything is effectively a video and sound, and they can use all of that to help them make inference particularly well with video. So we've looked at screening shots as a resource for texts. It's free, copyright free, and you can do anything you like with those videos, share them where you want. So that really worked for that, and we did the exact same tools. We used OneNote to get learners to share their thoughts and their ideas, and they can write, they can draw, they can upload pictures, take screenshots of the film and put them in. They can record, especially for younger learners, where there's a real issue around equity about how younger learners are able to access these tools. I can't do anything about passwords, can't do anything about passwords and knowing a username, but once a learner knows that, it's saved to their device's browser. And then they can access Glow. Hopefully they've signed in one time, they don't have to keep signing in, their browser can store that detail for them. If it's their own device, obviously it's not shared, but once my learner can access it, they can come back to the same bit, use those same tools over and over, but I think you could use OneNote in as many ways as you could do anything in the classroom. Whether it's say uploading images, recording sound, typing text, drawing a picture, writing with the pen and the screen, and it's really up to you as the teacher how you use that tool to apply the skills and knowledge that you have of pedagogy and learning and teaching, so in assessment. So I've also spoken intrinsically through that about how assessment's happening at every stage. When my learner writes on that screen, I can use that for formative assessment. I don't have to create a test at the end of it. The information they're sharing on that screen becomes my assessment, and as you can see here, I've got the option to export this image, and I can take that image and here's my assessment information. And unlike in the classroom, I don't have to lug about a big huge sheet of paper with post-it notes stuck to it. I don't have to peel post-it notes off the wall and store them somewhere. I can just take an image of this, and that is my assessment information. So I'm just going to open up and see what people have got. Using Classroom, yeah, we've got similar tips for that. I've got all this same content I've delivered today is in. I'll make sure it's in the slides. It's on our DigiLearn site. And what I delivered at the start of the year were 2 webinars that are the exact same as this one. One was for Office 365 and one was for G Suite. And what I would use within G Suite is you've still got the assignments within Classroom, and then Jamboard would be your alternative to OneNote. There's parts I prefer about Jamboard. It's a wee bit cleaner to look at. There's less going on the screen, less options and functions, but with OneNote, one of the big advantages is I can record audio to it, which is huge for younger learners or learners with particular needs. You can see someone saying there that they've been going to use OneNote as they go forward. There's loads on our blog page, and I'll show you again a wee quick tour of the literacy and numeracy pages in particular, how we have delivered some workshops or webinars around using OneNote or Jamboard to deliver literacy and numeracy. And the other part, we're not going to have time to cover it in this session, but more than happy to do further sessions and look in these tools. I would be saying familiarise yourself with forms, and I'm going to show very quickly a forms example and just why I would use forms. So again, any other questions or ideas, pop them into that the whiteboard there. And I'm just going to open up this form. This is my go-to form, and the reason for it is I can do just about everything I need with a form as well. In fact, it can be formative, just as formative as anything else. I am looking for this new topic example I created. So what the learner sees is this, and it switches really cleanly between computer and mobile. So we've had lots of feedback that learners find forms easy to engage with, because if it's on a mobile device, you try and make a PowerPoint using your mobile phone. Can you do it? Yes. Can you write a full essay on your mobile phone using the Word app? Yes. Would you choose to? Probably not. You'd want a laptop or something with a full-size keyboard if you've got to write a whole essay. So forms adapts really well, and it fits a mobile screen. So forms is really useful if you know your learners are accessing a mobile. So this is about my new topic. So I want some flipped learning here. I've given the learners a video to watch, and I'll show you very quickly in a wee second how I've developed that. Again, whole webinars and workshops and loads of posts on our website about how to create forms. But I've put a video in from YouTube, so the BBC Teach channel on YouTube. So my learner watches that, and then I want them to make a list of things that they know about the Romans. Again, the wee Immersive Reader symbol, it will read that question to my learner if they need that support. That's built in, that's an automatic function. I've got some multiple choice, and then I've got text answers, so they can either pick an answer or they can write an answer. But what's really good about it is, in the question, I've put a link in to some materials. So in this case, I didn't create, I've taken somebody else's thing link, but I've created a thing link where you can upload an image and add text to it, or you can add images. So I've got, you can see a video there, so I can put a video on for them to watch. I've put an image and some text there, or somebody else has, and they can access this again in one place. I've made a form, they can watch the video, they can share their thoughts, they can click this link to access the thing link. You might want to consider using the maps as well. I think it's definitely worth considering Google Earth is also free to use online, so I'm going to accept that. So what I can use, I'm using some Google historical map overlays here from the National Library of Scotland. So we'll learn about the Romans. This was examples made for a group in North Lanarkshire. So we looked at Strathclyde Park, and you can actually pull up maps, again, which you can use. The Literacy and English Principles and Practice tells you can use maps as a text. So they can interrogate this. What did they notice? And if they're looking at this map from, I think was it from around about the turn of the century, there's no loch in Strathclyde Park at the turn of the century. I think it was about the 60s. So it's a 1950s map, so you can see the map here, 1950s, and there wasn't a loch there until I think the 60s or 70s. It was built over a village. So learners to look at that in their local area and to interrogate a map. There's loads of learning can go on there. Google Earth, one of my favourites as well. No login required to access it, so you don't have to worry about GDPR and things. What I've done is I've shared a link to the Colosseum. We're learning about the Romans. How many in my class have been to the Colosseum? You know, that's hard to gauge. Depending on the area I live, might be very few, but I could show them a picture, I could show them a video, I could give them a book, but what a book or a video doesn't do is this. I can grab the wee street view and drop it in there. I've got some information, so I can read my text here. I can watch this video that this is pre-made, somebody else has built this again, and I'm just using it. But what I can do is drop into Street View, and I can look at what it was like to be in the Colosseum. So if we're learning, what do you think a gladiator would have felt being in the Colosseum? This is much easier for me to write about because I can experience it. Did you know that the Colosseum had multiple layers below, and I think in fact had the elevators to lift up and down? That's hard to picture unless you go there and you see it. What does it remind you of something that you might have experienced in your real life. Well, I'm looking at that and seeing a football stadium. So it becomes a lot easier for a learner to engage with that when they're able to access these rich texts online. And there's loads, there's tons you can use in Google Earth. I've shared them all through a form. Again, I've made a book creator about the Romans, and they can access that as well. My own book I've written about the Romans. Loads of different question types. And what is really useful to show you as well before we finish is when I'm creating these, I'm not going to show you how to create it just now. Running out of time for that. But again, something we can do in another session. Simply, I click a section and I add new. I can pick multiple choice, answer with a text. One that I think is so often overlooked. I'm just going to have to change the settings. And I want my learners, only learners within my organisation. So I need to sign into Glow. And what I've got as an option here is they can upload a file. So if this was a maths quiz, I would have questions 1 to 10 multiple choice, because it will mark itself. Quizzes will mark itself if you set that up to do so. But I always get maths teachers that say, but I want to see the working, that's what's important. And the beauty is, I can create a file, upload your working. And when my learner views this, what they'll get is an option here to upload a file. And if that's on their mobile phone, it should automatically give them an option to open their camera to get a photo to upload. With my Windows device, it's asked me to upload a photograph here. So there's, let's upload this picture for example. Create a poster about cyber resilience. There's my poster, and I can upload that to my form as an answer. So again, thinking about your learners and how they show their understanding. So they can do that working on a bit of paper, photograph it, and upload it to Teams, and that working should support what they've written on their form as their multiple choice answers. And again, it lets you give the best of both worlds. It's marking itself, which is really handy as a teacher, considering time restraints, but also you can then go in and look at it, and what it will show you is the picture that they've uploaded, and you can take that to OneNote or Word, or use the photo editing tools on your device to annotate it, save it, and you can send that back to them for their feedback. So that's why I would be focusing on forms as well as assignments. So I'm just going to come back just now and see if nobody else is added there to those 2 points on the whiteboard. But if there is anything else, please do, or I don't know if you can write on the whiteboard when I'm not sharing it. I don't know if that's the case. Are there any other thoughts or questions as we finish? Again, please pop them into the chat. What I just want to show is, in fact, I've got a couple of slides before we come back. So lots of points there. Find my PowerPoint again. And just to finish, lots of information. I've put lots of examples into this PowerPoint that I'll share with you. And just rather than you having to go search our blog or YouTube channel, I've put links to, here's an example of how I would do literacy with OneNote, how I would do it with Jamboard. It's the same examples but for different tools. I focus on screening shorts and word waves, which is really great from BBC Bitesize. Great use of video to tell a story for younger learners. Some strategies for reading from my Literacy English colleagues. I would be using that all day long, sharing that with my learners and saying, you pick a strategy from each column, and that's how I want you to respond to that text. Saves me some time, and it really gets them to do the thinking. There's an example we did for our literacy. That's what a Jamboard ends up looking like, and again, it'd be the same. You could do the same thing with your Microsoft Whiteboard and Teams. So lots of thoughts. My learners are collaborating on that. Can do the same in OneNote, just not with post-its. That's something hopefully Mike Thilson will get added for us. But you can add your own wee bits of text, or you can insert a table and get each learner to write in a box in the table. Loads of literacy resources to consider for online learning. They're all free, they're all easy to access, and I'd be using these as my texts, but personally I'd be coming back to Jamboard, OneNote, Forms for where I want them to do the learning. And again, some maths examples, so how to count using the maths bot tools, and how to copy and paste those with Snipping Tool and put them in your Jamboard, your OneNotes. Mathsbot, and there's a video for using Mathsbot with Snipping Tool. And again, Toy Theatre, it's like a child, a much younger, sort of focused version of Mathsbot, I think, a wee bit easier on the eye, or more colourful, which might be suitable for younger learners. a wee example of a Jamboard that we did talk about numeracy, same example I modelled to you about showing all the different ways. There's what my OneNote could look like. So all I've asked is, tell me about the number 37, George, and here's all the different ways that I can represent that number. Looking at that, I don't have to make a test. Does George understand that numerical value? I would say yes. He's got a really good, but there's some number bonds there. So I can see that my learner does understand this, and I can give them feedback appropriate to that. Just that reminder about the Higgius, it's all about the quality of the learning and teaching, and it's so vital for our learners we give them assessment and feedback on that assessment to help them move forward. But I would say, as a caveat to that balance and check your how. I've talked about lots here, I've talked at speed. Some of you you might be seeing things you already know. Some might have never seen some of these examples and that'll feel like I've gone very fast. It's really tricky to try to strike that balance as you do with your learners. You get some that are going faster than others, some that have got other prior knowledge. So trying to give you as many examples but trying to be clear. I've put lots of content in the slides that you can go back and review, but do focus on that one thing. What is it you can do tomorrow? Is there a thing that you can take from here and use that tomorrow, develop it and get better at that? Don't try to do everything. I don't think there's any expectation, and if they are, they're unrealistic expectations that you're going to be singing and dancing, remote learning with 10 different platforms. I'm using OneNote and Forms. That's it. That's where all my learning gets done. My learners become familiar with it. I'm familiar with it. And that means I can focus on the quality of the lesson, the learning and teaching, rather than trying to work out some newfangled thing that looks brilliant, but I've never used it. My learners have never used it. I don't want them focusing on the tool. I want them focusing on the learning. So pick one, develop it, and build on that. The last wee bit is a wee ask from us, 2 wee asks coming up, and they're no big asks, you don't have to do them, but they would help. We've got a section on our blog called Your Experiences, Your Community. From the homepage, you can access that. We'd love to hear your stories, and so would others across Scotland. People are really engaging with this, so you can click here, submit a form, a couple of sentences, a paragraph at most. And what we're collecting is this share and practice section. So from our community, we've had over 100 educators have now shared their story. There's one done just this morning, biology teacher using forms to support the learners. So you can have a look through them, you can search and pick one that's particular to your curricular area if that's required. But all of these blog posts are shared by somebody using these tools or platforms or pedagogies to support and develop the learner's knowledge and understanding. And it might just be what you're looking for. So you see one here from Susan in Glasgow, using forms with her understanding, analysing, evaluating texts at national level. And again, you have some people using that in primary school level. Susan actually did some work with us in a webinar, and you can see a video recording of her content there as well. So there's loads of information in there, and we'd love if you had the time, 10 minutes to contribute a wee bit to that. Share it with us at Did You Learn Scot on Twitter or via the blog. And thanks very much to everyone. You're all very welcome, and take care. I will speak to you soon, hopefully.